The Italian railway system is one of the most important parts of the infrastructure of Italy, with a total length of 24,227 kilometers. Origins. Railways were introduced in Italy when it was still a divided country. The first line to be built on the peninsula was the Naples-Portici line, in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which was 7.640 kilometers long and was inaugurated on October 3, 1839, 9 years after the world's first modern intercity railway, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. The following year, the firm Holzhammer of Bolzano was granted the imperial royal privilege to build the Milano-Monza line, in the then Kingdom of Lombardy-Venetia, a puppet state of the Austrian Empire, on request of the Milanese and Venetian industries, but also for the already clear military importance. Construction of the Milan-Venice line was also begun. In 1842, the Padua-Mestre stretch of 32 kilometers was inaugurated, followed in 1846 by the Milan-Treviglio and Padua-Vicenza, as well as the bridge spanning the lagoon of Venice. In the Kingdom of Sardinia, King Charles Albert ordered on July 18, 1844, the construction of the Turin-Genoa Railway, which was inaugurated on December 6, 1853. This was followed by the opening of other sections which connected with France, Switzerland and Lombardy-Venetia. A locomotive factory was also founded in Genoa, in order to avoid the English monopoly in the field. This became the modern Ansaldo. In Tuscany, the Duke of Lucca signed the concession for the Lucca-Pisa Railway, while, in 1845, the Duchy of Parma began the construction of two lines towards Piacenza and Modena. In the Papal States, where Pope Gregory XVI had declared the railways being a devilish work, some lines were begun in 1846 under Pius IX with the Roman Frascati Railroad, then the Roman Civitavecchia Railroad. In the course of the Wars of Italian independence, railways proved to be instrumental in the defeat of Charles Albert's army at Fascist Era, as well as in the Austrian ones at Palestro and Magenta. In the latter, French troops were able to reach quickly the battlefields thanks to the new transportation mean, and established a defense line right on the ballast of the line. Under unified Italy, at the creation of the unified Kingdom of Italy, railroads in the country were the following, for a total of 2,064 kilometers active railroads. Lines in the Papal States were still in construction, while Sicily had its first short railroad only in 1863. The existing lines did not form an organized net. Property of the line was statal or private, the latter in turn for private or statal use. A first organic structure began to be created in 1865 with the connections of the existing sections. In order to promote the industrial development, the government entrusted the existing lines to 5 concessionaires: SFAI, SFR, SFM, Società Vittorio Emanuele, Società Reale del Ferrovie Sarda. The War of 1866 caused great disruption to the industrial activities, including those of the railway companies, which went nearly bankrupt, and a state intervention was needed to save them. In 1870, the last remnant of Papal States was also annexed to Italy. It comprised the railway connection from Rome to Frascati, Civitavecchia, Terni and Cassino. In 1872 there were in Italy about 7,000 kilometers of railroads, entrusted to the existing companies in the following shares. Other secondary lines were operated by minor companies. After the unification, construction of new lines was boosted. In 1875, with the completion of the section Orte-Orvieto, the direct Florence-Rome line was completed, reducing the travel time of the former route passing through Foligno or Tarantola. In 1875, a proposal of the Italian government to form a single company out of the existing concessionaires was refused by the Italian parliament, provoking also the fall of the government. In the meantime, the economic situation of the secondary companies continued to get worse, enhancing the failure of the concessionaire regime when, at the same time, in the whole Europe the tendency to aggregate all railways into a single, state-owned company became predominant. This, among the other benefits, granted the fulfillment of social exigencies in transportation that a strictly profit-oriented policy could not afford. The Italian government was however slow to react, and only in 1878 and 1880, respectively, the largely deficitary SFAI and SFR went under state administration. The Convenzione of 1884. Despite this situation, in 1884 the Italian Parliament issued a commission study in which it was declared preferable a private administration of railways. The Convenzione between Italy and the three main remaining private companies were signed on April 23, 1884, for a period of 60 years. SFM was assigned the lines on the Adriatic Sea, while the Società per la Strada Ferrate del Mediterraneo and the Società del Ferrovia della Sicilia received, respectively, the Rete Mediterranea and the Rete Sicula. The companies received in total 8,510 kilometers of railways, under the vigilance of the Ministry of the Public Works, through a General Inspectorate for Railroads, which replaced the previous position of the General Royal Commissariat. However, this move not only failed to improve the situation of railways, hampering the economic development and tourism as well, but worsened it further. Liabilities of the secondary lines greatly exceeded the profits from the few remaining ones, and absorbed all the state's subsidies. By the 1880s, the Italian railways amounted to 10,510 kilometers. Ferrovie dello Stato. Private companies were definitively bought back by the Italian state on July 1, 1905, with the creation of the Ferrovie dello Stato, or FS, with a total of 10,557 kilometers of lines, of which it already owned 9,686 kilometers. The move was completed the following year with the acquisition of the remaining SFM network. By then FS possessed 13,075 kilometers of lines, of which 1,917 kilometers with double tracks. A general director was appointed, the Piedmontese engineer Riccardo Bianchi, who had held the same position for the Ferrovie Sicule. A general direction was created, with 13 central services and 2 general inspectorates, based in Rome. For peripheral operations, 8 compartmental directions were created. A capable and respected organizer, he had received a grievous heritage from the previous organizational chaos. The worst problem was the rolling stock. FS had 2,664 steam locomotives, 738 with more than 30 years of service. Passenger cars were 6,985, mostly older than 30 years. Freight cars were 52,778, with 1/5 older than 40 years. The first urgent measure was construction in 1,905 of 567 new locomotives, 1,244 passenger cars and 20,263 freight cars. Under Bianchi, the FS rapidly modernized, the semaphore system was introduced, and centralized hydrodynamic switches and signals were added in the main stations, which were updated or built from scratch. Electrification, already used on the lines around Varese and in Valtellina, was expanded, particularly in the north of Italy, using the 3-phase AC system. Bianchi's direction lasted for 10 years. Under his successor, Ing. de Corn, the FS was involved in the Italian effort in World War I. The company suffered much destruction, and after the end of the conflict, had new problems from the incorporation of lines in the new territories lost by Austria, with different equipment and rules. Fascist Era. The period from 1922 to 1939 was heavy with important construction and modernization programs for the Italian railways. which incorporated also 400 kilometers from the Ferrovie Reali Sarda of Sardinia. The most important program was that of the Rome-Naples and Bologna-Florence Diretta Simas. The first reduced the travel time from the two cities by an hour and a half. The second, announced proudly as "constructing fascism," included the second longest tunnel in the world at the time. Electrification on 3000 V direct current was introduced, which later supplanted the existing three-phase system. Other improvements included automatic blocks, light signals, construction of numerous main stations and other technical modernizations. The rolling stock was enhanced from 1933 by DMU and EMU, nicknamed Littorine from the lictorial symbols of the fascist regime. The Italian EMUs, in particular, started the traditional vanguard position of Italy in the field. On 6 December 1937 an ETR 200 traveled on the Rome-Naples line at a speed of 201 km per hour in the Campolian-Cisterna section. 2 years later the same train reached 203 km per hour on the Milan-Florence line. In this period food trains made up of refrigerated wagons started to run from southern to northern Italy, and abroad. The Ferrovie dello Stato were moved from the Ministry of Public Works to the newly formed Ministry of Transports. From World War II to 1970s, the war left railways in Italy in a disrupted state. Entire lines were out of work and much of the rolling stock destroyed. Thanks to the Marshall Plan, in the following years they could be rebuilt, although the possibility of reorganizing the network was missed due to short-sighted policies. The fundamental line Battipaglia-Reggio Calabria was doubled, while the program of updating of infrastructures, superstructures, services, color light signaling and cars were updated or extended. Also the three-phase lines were gradually turned into standard 3000 VDC lines. Increasing numbers of steam locomotives were replaced by electric or diesel ones. In the 1960s also the first unified passenger cars appeared and the first attempts of interoperability with foreign companies were started, culminating in the creation of Trans-Europe Express services. More modern ferries for the service over the Strait of Messina were introduced and, in 1961, a similar service begun to Sardinia, although not providing transport of railways cars. High-speed projects. In the 1960s the FS started an innovative project for high-speed trains. E-444 locomotives were the first standard locomotives capable of 200 km per hour of speed, while an AL601 EMU reached a speed of 240 km per hour during a test. Other EMUs, such as the ETR 220, ETR 250 and ETR 300 were also updated for speeds up to 200 km per hour. Also the braking systems of cars were updated to fit the increased traveling speeds. On June 25, 1970, works for the Florence-Rome Diretta Sima, the first high-speed line in Italy, were started. They included the 5,375 meters bridge on the Paglia River, then the longest in Europe. However, the works were completed only in the early 1990s. In 1975 a crack program for a widespread updating of the rolling stock was launched. However, as it was decided to put more emphasis on local traffic, this caused a shifting of resources from the ongoing high-speed projects, with their subsequent slowing or, in some cases, total abandonment. Therefore, 160 E656 electric and 35 D345 locomotives for short-medium-range traffic were acquired, together with 80 EMUs of the AL801 940th class, 120 ALN 668 diesel rail cars, some 1,000 much-needed passenger and 7,000 freight new cars were also ordered. From 1980s onwards, the 1980s were a controversial period. Despite the recent efforts, the average age of the rolling stock increased, especially on secondary lines. Late running was frequent and the freight sector lost ground in favor of road transportation. The situation started to improve only from the early 1990s, when the first effects of the new high-speed programs launched from the late 1970s began to appear. These included the famous ETR 400 Pendolino, capable of 250 km per hour and first used for the Rome-Florence-Bologna-Milan service. These were later replaced by the more advanced ETR 450 and ETR 500, the latter capable of speed up to 300 km per hour. Works on the high-speed lines continued, the Rome-Naples being opened in 2005. Other lines are under construction. In 2000, FS became an holding company which controls various companies, among which there is Trenitalia, a limited society. The various services were divided into three different companies for long range, local range and freight, while numerous other sub-companies were created. Property of the railroad was assigned to RFI from 2001. Today, railways in Italy continue to experience the difficulties and incongruousness inherited from past times. Modern high-speed lines, trains and locomotives are paired by others, especially in southern Italy, in which the transportation speed is still comparable to that of the early 19th century. The freight sector has only recently showed signs of recovery from the long-term depressed state it has lived in through the 20th century. Commuter services are often causes of polemics due to poor services. In several cases, necessary lines survive only through support of local authorities. The liberalization of the market has brought the appearance of only a small number of other companies. Railways companies certified for operation in Italy. Companies certified to run railways in Italy are from 2000 Ferrovie dello Stato S.p.A., Trenitalia S.p.A., from 2001 Metro Napoli S.p.A., Ferrovie Nord Milano Sizio S.p.A., Rail Traction Company S.p.A., from 2002 Del Fungo Gira Servizi Ferroviari S.p.A., Gruppo Torinese Trasporter S.p.A., SERFER Servizi Ferroviari S.r.l., Hutpack S.p.A., from 2003 Ferrovia Emilia Romagna S.r.l., La Ferroviaria Italiana S.p.A., Cargo Nord S.r.l., Ferrovie Adriatico Sangritana S.r.l., Sistemi Territoriali S.p.A., Strade Freight del Mediterraneo S.r.l., Swiss Rail Cargo Italy S.r.l., from 2004 SBB Cargo Italia S.r.l., Ferrovie Nord Cargo S.r.l., Azienda Consorziale Trasporto di Reggio Emilia, Ferrovia Alifanari Benevento Napoli S.r.l., Ferrovie Nord Milano Trasporter S.r.l., from 2005 Trasporto Ferroviario Toscano S.p.A., Ferrovie Centrale Umbria S.r.l., Railion Italia S.r.l., Railway S.p.A., Azienda Trasporto Collettivi e Mobilità S.p.A., ATC, Bologna S.p.A., Monferrail S.r.l., from 2006 SAD Trasporto Locale S.p.A., Nord Cargo S.r.l., Arenaways S.p.A.,